I'm Niamh. I'm not going to introduce the panel, they'll introduce themselves as we go around. That's us up there, mug shots. This is all about social impact, but what it means to each and every one of us will be totally different. If I asked everybody for a definition, you'd all probably give us a roughly the same sort of idea, and there'd be bits that were the same and bits that were different. But what we're actually going to ask the question today is, what's actually being delivered? And what are the 10 things that we, if we were to create a list, what 10 things would we like to measure? And to achieve that, we want to actually ask, why do we measure? What do we measure? More importantly, why do we measure it all? Because from my role as an ESG director, I'm being asked more and more to measure. And I'm not sure some of the things I'm being asked to measure, people who are asking me to measure them know why they're asking me to measure them. I'm not sure they even understand some of the stuff I give back, because the questionnaires get longer and longer every day, and there seems to be more tag-ons. So we're just going to look a little bit at that as a group, but we actually want you guys to compile and add to the list as well. So at the end of it, we will have 3 takeaways, but we'll actually have about a list of 10 or more that we can pass to the UKA, who are then going to take it forward to see, a little bit like what was being discussed earlier this morning, what can we do as an industry? What could we set out as a standard, 10 standard measurements that we felt as an industry were important in BTR? And by that we mean across the board. Yes, Adam mentioned challenges, and we don't want to talk about those. We talk about opportunities. We've done too much negativity in the world at the moment. Let's go positive. So we have a list that we've sort of discussed, and we...
I'm not working, I'm taking notes.
He's taking notes, but he's actually going to... Because it really is important that we get you guys involved, okay? It's not about us sitting here telling. It's about all of us collating together. What is it important that we measure? Why do we measure it? What purpose does it have? So here's the list, a very long list, of some of the things that I get asked with increasing, so mine are the top lot. I get asked proximity to green space, the actual amount of green space, the planting of the trees, the native species, biodiversity, net gain, 1. I get asked operational data. And for an apartment situation for us, that's easier than for a bulk of our assets, which is single-family homes. I don't want to be like somebody painting the Forth Road Bridge and having to drive around the country and ask 6,500 people, would you like to share your data with me, please? And they say, no, you're all right, thanks, or they're not in. Again, that comes down to what's possible and meaningful. So these are just some of the things. Underneath, then we've also got some from Matt on the things that we feel are measurable and important to measure. But actually, it's everybody in here. What do you want to measure? If we were to literally just have 10 things that we wanted to measure, what would those 10 things be? And can we come to some sort of arrangement where we can go back to the UKA and say, right, here's an idea for a group to get together, come up with some standards along these 10 plus. And we do have a little caveat of, we know there are challenges. Like I'm saying about me driving around 6,500 houses. That's a challenge. So how do you overcome those? So I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what do you currently measure, what do you think is important, and what would you like to see being measured going forward in your ideal world?
Great.
I'm not picking up your mic, I'm really sorry.
Do you want me to pass him mine?
Can I just take it out of your pocket?
Hello. Can you hear me? Fabulous. My name's Matthew Morgan. I'm the Director of the Quality of Life Foundation. Our aim is to make health and well-being central to the way we create and care for our homes and neighbourhoods, because we believe that a decent, affordable home in a safe, well-designed neighbourhood is the basis of a healthy, happy life. So our interest in Build to Rent is very much speaking to that place it can have that Brendan has been outlining as a key Anchor in communities. We're very interested in those in the property sector and the housing sector that take a long-term approach to places, because we believe that's how you secure the best health and well-being outcomes. I've put some indicators up there. We carry out surveys through local authorities. We've been working on a kind of very broad level, but we also review developments as well. So we're currently working with Urban and Civic on a number of sites, and we've got a survey out with Redrow as well, but we've also worked with Countryside, Grosvenor and others to try to find out what people think and feel about where they live, not just on a building level, as important as that is, but on a neighbourhood level, because we feel that's where we can have the most impact for a place, and it's of most interest then to partner organisations like local authorities or housing associations or others who provide that same potential for the delivery of better places and that position as kind of anchor institutions. And that's really what we see as the build to rent sector's potential is to take that place in a local setting.
Thank you. Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm the Corporate Affairs Director at Get Living. So I just want to tell you a little bit about kind of my 10 pence about social value. So I think when I joined Get Living and I was kind of given the social value brief and I looked at the framework that we were using to measure social value, I remember thinking, gosh, why is this so difficult? And we're spending all this time collecting all this data that didn't really mean anything, and we're also kind of missing out a lot of the amazing things that we were doing in our neighbourhoods that are quite difficult to measure sometimes. So we kind of went back to square one and said, okay, well, what do we want to measure, and how does this kind of fit with our business where we are now? So we don't actually have a measurement tool at the moment because we are working on it with the team at the Good Economy. But we kind of started to get some impact measurements around very much kind of under the banner of healthy, sustainable neighbourhoods that people really feel proud of and they can connect to. But I think with social value, we always have to be really careful that we're not just doing things to kind of tick a box or to meet a requirement in a framework or get a higher score, because I think some of the best social value initiatives often are ones that actually take a lot of time to be able to measure. And a really good example of that is the Lab E20, which is one of our projects in East Village, which is a commercial unit that we've turned into a sustainable fashion hub. And actually, some of the really impactful value that we get out of that is the ideas and the innovation and the stories that come out of that space, and how we kind of really impact young people and people interested in getting into the creative industries. And that's really hard to measure. So what I would always say is, you know, if we do agree on a measurement tool here, what's also really important is the power of storytelling alongside any kind of numbers or impact measurement tool, because I think that's, at the end of the day, we're all kind of people-focused businesses, and it's the people that we really want to help and, you know, make their lives better.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Dominic.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm actually wearing two hats today. So I work for a company, an MD, a company called Global Apartment Advisors. We're providing build-to-rent advisory work across the world for clients in Australia, New Zealand, across Europe. But we also have a second business, which is an OpCo. We've got a joint venture with Oaktree, a US private equity firm. We're building out a platform. And so we have assets live, and sort of at the coalface is actually trying to figure out this ESG piece in all its different components. So it is the environmental, it's the social, it's the governance. But in the context of social impact, what we're really trying to do on the ground, and we've got our team there, our site team, in fact, a few of them here today, in fact, I've seen a couple of them already, that they're at the coalface, and how can we support them to understand their residents, feedback. Obviously, we run surveys, we do events, but what more can we do? And obviously, learning off others who've been a little bit longer than us.
Brilliant. And that's really what this is about. It's not about us standing up here and telling you what we do, because you could probably read that online if you were so inclined. We'd love to know what you think so that we can start adding to this list. What's important for you to measure? What are you currently measuring that's working? And what are your views? So you have had lunch, you've had a whole morning of sitting and listening. Now is your time to do, so the doors are locked, you can't escape now. So somebody kick it off. What do you think is important to measure on a social value thing? I mean, for me, I'll kick it off then to get it going. So for me, measuring, and I think it comes back to Anna's storytelling, it's about people. And if you can tell a good story, sometimes talking to investors, the numbers, yes, they want, but actually the story tells exactly what we're achieving and what we're doing. And I will argue till I'm blue in the teeth that sometimes you cannot and should not be trying to apportion a financial value to the social value you are doing, because it's not right to. Who decides the proxy, or who decides the value of somebody's life, or the activity that we're offering? So for us, the measurement of, yes, the number of people that we sort of engage with, but more importantly for us, it's the local element. So we're not about, we have houses all over the country, so we're not about ticking a national charity, ticking the box saying this is our national charity for the year, because actually for us, our residents across the country matter. I've got two remits. One is geographic and the other is demographic, to make sure that we're supporting charities local within the places we have communities. So that's what is important for us to measure, okay? So for you, go for it. Excellent, thank you.
So Theo Plowman from the so I'm not at operational level, so I'm not collecting any data, but I'm interested in the sort of story we're selling to government and what we're telling them about, what Build to Rent community's doing.
There's a microphone coming.
And I'm really, oh, sorry. Yeah. I won't start again. So I really like, obviously, the Matt knows I love the Qual framework and all the extras around it. But one of the things that I think is really key is kind of the bread and butter of what Build to Rent and housing more generally delivers. So it's about that as a fundamental and then unlocking all the other things around it. So for me, it's very much a question of Build to Rent provides for that sort of gap in the middle. It's not the affordable, it's not home ownership and high end, particularly in metro areas. But it's that sort of key worker, productive worker in the middle section. So labour mobility and how that enables growth is something that I'm really interested in, and how to measure that, not just purely in the salaries that they're earning, but in how you're bringing in workers to your city to provide that productive service, and also how having them concentrated in one area, creates ideas, creates a breeding ground for greater entrepreneurship, etc. We've seen that. I don't need to give a history lesson. Right from the industrial age, it's always urban areas that sort of multiply and have that multiplying effect. We see it. We always want to create a Silicon Valley wherever we can, but that's what's happened in San Francisco. Is you've got these concentration of creatives and key workers. So that's something I kind of want to capture. I'm not sure where it starts and whether there's examples already, but capturing that labour mobility, bringing those key workers into an area and how that boosts the overall economy.
Okay, I think that ties in with Anna's, the project you were talking about in your introduction, about what you find is being brought in and how do you, and so I think it's a case of how do we get to a measurement point of that. So that is, obviously for us, one of the key metrics of where we build is to create, it has to be near good transport, near employability, near good schools, near the amenities, near all the things that you need. And if those things aren't there, then ensuring that they are there. So I think that ties in really well, but it is a good metric to try and work out how, and that's what this is about. If that's something that we all feel is an important thing, which actually will then tie into lots of other things, then yes, that goes on the list, as they say. This isn't like, what's that, room 101? Go on the list. Thank you very much for that. Is there anybody else with, we must all have ideas. Yes, go for it.
I'm Liz Pennant. I work at Goodstone Living. Hi. I'm General Counsel at Goodstone Living. We're a build-to-rent investment manager, development manager, property manager. We've got 2 schemes under development, one in Birmingham, one in Edinburgh at the moment. I'm pretty involved in the ESG side, and one of the things that we like to think of on the social value side is splitting the kind of construction and the operating phases. And, I think we can all agree in Build to Rent, we've got a really unique opportunity to touch the lives of a lot of people, because what are we doing? We're building communities. And even in that construction phase, there's a huge amount of activity obviously going on in that site. There's a lot of money essentially being invested into that area before you've even put people in there. So, one thing we require with all of our contractors is, a huge commitment to the social value side. So that may be, having a certain number of apprenticeships. It may be using a certain amount of local supply chain. To your point, locality is incredibly important, and supporting local charities. Our contractor in Edinburgh, McLaren Rush, is doing amazing work with some local charities in Edinburgh, which, you can feel the tangible effects from already, and, the building's only halfway constructed. But then in the operating phase, I think, you're capturing a lot of the ones that we're thinking about, but there's a lot of crossover, I think. So, our scheme in Birmingham has got a huge 1 acre garden in the middle of it. And Birmingham, I don't know if any of you have been there, there are not many parks in Birmingham. So access to green space is a huge part of the social value offering, but it also plays into the biodiversity point. So I think, to what you were saying about not always putting a kind of financial value onto everything, there can quite often be a crossover between the E and the S. In the way we're thinking about these things, and it's important not to be too categorical about it.
No, absolutely. And that splitting the two, I mean, how early do we get involved? I think that's sort of really important on the construction phase, because sometimes once you're in, and I'm certainly finding this because I've come to ESG a little bit later, come to the company later, and some of the plans are already in place, and then I ask the question, and they go, we'll have to go back to planning on that. And I go, what, to change the type of tree? And I think that comes back to how early we can get involved, how early we can engage with. We did a fantastic project recently in London with LSE Cities, a research project involving young people. So what do they want the space to look like? They're the people who are going to live there. How do young women feel in the environment? Are they feeling safe? What needs to be there for them to feel safe? Because what we feel is a safe environment for them may not actually be the case. How we feel they use that green space, one of the fantastic facts, or really interesting fact that came out of it, was very few young people want to use those. Boys, maybe, for football and such like, but those great big parks that we create, a football pitch, and we tick the box that goes, that's however many square meters of green space. Very few young people are actually using them. That's not what they want, but we haven't asked them what they want. We've assumed that that great big space for playing would be perfect for them. But they're actually telling us, no, it isn't. That's not what they want. They want spaces where they can sit. They want spaces where they can commune together, can chat, can bring their coffee and safely sit and talk. They don't necessarily want a cafe, but they want spaces where they can sit and talk. They want spaces where they can maybe plant some things. They actually said that. They want, believe it or not, swings. And for me, I always thought, I love a swing, even now, but I wouldn't admit it. But I would have assumed that was more of the primary sort of age and that sort of playground thing. But actually, young teenagers are saying, no, we'd love to have some swings that we could use. I'm thinking,
one of the problems is that the housing sector has not necessarily been the best at talking to its customers. There's a complete dearth of market research, post-occupancy evaluation, whatever you want to call it. We just did a review for DLUC on the sector and its use. And the key thing is to start thinking about this thing not at construction, not at operation, but at the very first stage. So what sort of place do you want to create? What is the local need that you're addressing? And can you create the kind of place that you want to see, which addresses that local need? And can you prove that from the outset, which is before any of that construction or operation starts, and then go in and measure it afterwards and then through time, so you can start to build a proper picture up of what the impact is of the work that you've done and the kind of place that you're creating over time. And I think it's only by doing that you can start to think, you can start to feed back that sort of information about swings or about the kind of local economy needs that there are, or the aspirations for a creative hub, or whatever it is, that has to start at the very start, and those evaluation measurements, whether they're quantitative or qualitative, have to be thought of at the start. So I think we just need to get this thinking in as early as possible, so that we can then start to...
And I think we're very good at surveying our residents on their kind of experience day to day, but we're not very good at surveying our residents about the place that they live in, outside of their home.
But it's not just residents either.
Of course, yeah,
that's
it's a wider
part of that
community,
market view of the
absolutely,
build-to-rent sector, that it's not just about residents. If you want to impress and talk to and partner with local authorities, you have to be delivering something to them.
Yeah.
So it's about involving the local community, it's about creating jobs, it's about creating a nice place to pass through all.
And I think that's then a challenge that we need to put out there to any developer starting. We need to say, this is what needs to happen before you start looking at the social impact of at the construction phase or at the operational phase. You need to actually be starting way before that. And so I think we need, possibly, one of the challenges from this and one of the outcomes of this is we need to be saying, actually, that's what we require you to do. That's a standard we would like to have in place as an industry, is that actually before you even go to planning, you have to have evidence that you have engaged with the community that you intend to build in. I think one of the biggest concerns I have as I drive around, because we've got literally from Edinburgh, from Perth down to Exeter, Redcar, can't get any further east, to Liverpool, and everything in between. And I drive around all the developments and I think, is this the legacy we want to leave? Do we want every development to look the same? Do we want every single housing community to look the same in years to come? Is that what the young of today are going to look back and go, gee, thanks? You know, I've been to China. I can see what that looks like when I'm driving up from Shenzhen, where they want us to see, to Guangzhou. They're all the same. But what are we putting in place? What standards are we saying? Actually, no, it's not about what have you done before you've even gone to planning, before you've even, what have you done and who have you engaged with? I can see you've got the microphone.
I just want to make 2 points, really. One, on the planning early. We do quite a lot of advice on helping people when they're bidding to win an opportunity. And what we find in that situation, often it's for public-type land, is that there's real thought about this, and it comes into the bid, and then the challenge is it being delivered. You know, that you can have fantastic ideas, we can have, you know, the best ideas for what the community wants and how to deliver on a vision, but then it's about mobilising it and making it happen. So that was going to be my first point. My second point was, I'm from Say, and we have a bit of our business called Hearsay, and we measure the lead to lease experience in build to rent, and we've done 2 benchmarks so far. In the last benchmark, we included ESG as a topic, and that means that our mystery shoppers answer a number of questions over whether they're told about the sort of ESG credentials of the place that they're touring. And so that covers everything, including community. And I need Esme here because I can't remember the stats, but they're really poor. And I think that it's such a missed opportunity because a lot of the places, build-to-rent schemes, have fantastic, could tick so many ESG boxes, but we're not communicating that well to the potential customers, and probably not to the customers either. I mean, they're experiencing the sort of positive impact of living in a build-to-rent place, but we certainly know through the lead to lease bit of the journey that we're not singing from the rooftops about things that are really positive from, you know, every aspect, ES and G. So some of it is about communicating with our customers better as well, and I think that does come down to measurement, because I think that maybe if the team understand what's being measured, then they might find it easier to communicate the benefits of being in a build-to-rent environment as opposed to somewhere else.
What's one thing you'd like to see measured?
One thing I'd like to see measured, happiness.
There you go.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think this link to the happiness point as well is another one that I've been thinking about is kind of the value of a good night's sleep. And I think that's, you know, we all know that our health and well-being is so much better after a good night's sleep, and is there anything that we can do? I suppose it's quite hard to measure about, are our residents sleeping well at night? Are we doing everything we can to make sure they get a good night's sleep?
But just because something's difficult to measure doesn't
Yeah,
mean
doesn't
somebody, going back to your innovation bit, won't come up with a way of actually measuring it. And that's more meaningful. It's more meaningful than me being asked umpteen times, what's the generation of your PV panels on top of all your houses? And, you know, how come you haven't fed that back into the grid? And I go, do you even understand how these panels work? It's a use it or lose it, you know, and we don't have enough sunshine. And even if I could wire them all up to the grid wouldn't know what to do with it all. So it's the art of what's actually possible and meaningful to people. And am I getting a good night's sleep? Am I happy where I live? Do I, as a young female, feel I can walk around? Do I have somewhere I can actually...
Safety is so important.
Yeah, safety is huge on that. I can share that report, actually, which was quite interesting. Sorry.
Well, I might just use that analogy as a hook. So purpose-built student accommodation, anyone involved in that sector will know they're just astounded at the rents that are being achieved. And when you speak to the operators, they say, yeah, a lot of the overseas students, their parents just want them to have somewhere really safe, and they will pay an enormous amount. And that's something called revealed preferences. So the way you measure that is you basically measure the rent. So we need to be a little bit careful. I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here.
Oh, good.
A little bit of devil's advocate. But if you want to measure the impact, you have a survey that is taking place every minute of every day, and that is the rent that you can achieve on a scheme and in a location. And there was a very good report out, I think it's Homes England, measuring regeneration. And the first few pages, I was a bit like, yeah, they're going to try and measure things that are impossible to measure. And then they said, what you can actually do is use revealed preferences. And they actually measured the uplift in value. And they said, we don't really necessarily, know all the reasons, but we can tell that people are prepared to pay for these improvements. So I would be a little bit careful in saying you can't measure this directly. You can measure it. You can just use the rent.
Okay, so we can add that to the list. Yep, we've got to run over. Oh, we
sorry.
go there and then across. I've been given my 5-minute warning,
All right,
but I'm claiming back 2 because we started late.
I'll go quickly. So it's Lee Bullymore from Pollard Thomas Edwards Architects. We have grant funding from the University of Reading and a research associate based in our offices, developing kind of an experimental toolkit called the Happy Homes Toolkit. And what that is doing is, through interviewing residents and advisory groups, which I think the Quality of Life Foundation is involved with, it is developing an experimental piece of software that aims to predict the level of happiness and well-being residents have in their homes. So if it has a kind of a window in the kitchen, or it has big windows and people have a view outside. And the idea of that is kind of twofold. One, it's reporting back what it's reporting back what happiness is, but also that can be used at an early stage at design development to inform design choices, and then tested at the end in terms of the post-occupancy work that we do, and kind of create that virtual circle. So I was going to offer that as one way that you could possibly measure happiness.
Good, because we'll be coming back to you. If happiness is on the list, then obviously the people who've been here who are, when the email comes out from the UKAA saying this is what we'd like to measure, then please, please, please don't, get in touch. Don't sort of sit back and go, okay, that's somebody else who's going to do that. Coming to you next.
Hi, I'm Lindsay from Citra Living. I'm an investment director there. We are acquiring homes very quickly, but really with a strong social purpose in what we are trying to achieve. And at investment committees, rents are very carefully reviewed as to where we would be setting them. But my background is actually, before moving into residential, is student accommodation. And I think there, if you compare student to a hotel model, in a hotel, the general manager is incredibly well paid because they run that business unit. In student, the building manager would not be on a hotel general manager's salary, but they are the pastoral care, they are the lettings, they are the retainment of customers, and they also operate the building. And a lot of the time in student, you also find that the cleaners have really good rapport with the students living there. And so I think, back to your point, we actually collect a lot of information in very small ways through people in our buildings and through colleagues. But it's the feedback loop of that getting from that site there, like you were saying with the geographical coverage, to me, who's then doing the buying or the designing. And I think it's connecting all of that together and not losing the softer side of things as to how people are living. Are they getting a good night's sleep because of noise, or because of they can't, they're worried about their rent and arrears? So it goes all over the place. And I think it's that conversational piece that is actually quite hard to capture, because when you put a survey in front of somebody, you're putting it straight down into there. Yeah.
I think it's that people thing. We've got to, I think we're all I know I certainly am. I see another survey or I see another questionnaire and I will do anything, right down to ironing other than do it. So it's actually going and talking to people, because you learn.
All our surveys involve
people.
Digital, but also face-to-face, so that you have to have some element of it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Hi, Manuela, Compass Rock. I have actually a hospitality background, general manager, not that high salary. Oh, sorry. So definitely from my point of view, and being in Compass Rock, I learned that BTR needs a lot of communication and bringing people together, which we work a lot on, bringing community together and communicating whatever is around the surrounding and helping those people to understand, most likely, because bringing people together, it means as well listening to their point of view, but we have to listen openly to their point of view, because if we have to be open to criticism, because this it helps us to understand exactly what are their concerns, what do they need. And if we don't understand the criticism in a positive way, then this brings us possibly to go out of the and to not give the same type of service that we would like to guarantee to our residents.
So in terms of measurement, would you measure how many times people have a chance to share their voice? But equally, it comes back to, and I think somebody else mentioned it, it's a you said, we did. We need to be really careful that people have had an opportunity to say, and we don't just ignore it, that we actually act upon it and do something. Okay, so those would be two further measurement points. Are you ready? Yeah?
Yeah.
Microphone. And this probably needs to be the last one, because I am going to get told off.
James Walker from Campus Rock as well. Not that we're trying to dominate her.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, I think sort of the measurement side is very key as well, and I think it's a starting point. I think the starting point where we start from is going to be just as critical. So we've got to work out what our starting position is, then measure what it is we want to do, see the results of that happening, and then monitor it going forward to progress it. And I think that's full pitch all the way through is going to be quite critical to do. Now, ESG is always talked about with the investors. It's very important. They always say ESG in one word. The E side is very easy to monitor. That's much easier. The S side is becoming more important, but it's much harder to monitor. So it's trying to work out what it is we do. And as you said, it's trying to work out what stage it is we can step in to start that process. On the multifamily side, where we're looking to create a whole community, it's a lot easier. We can get into the development side. We can create all these areas. But on the single family side, where quite often at the moment the market is going in to buy an existing site off a house builder who's already done a lot of the work and put in the green spaces, etc.
Or not.
I think our job as BTR is to try and work out how to get in there and actually add the extra value on top of that, and that's around people. And it's trying to work out how we can best do that. I think so we're giving some form of clear template to people saying, these are best practices to do. If we can create that best practice and say, here we go, here's best practice to do, that will start the process.
Okay. Have you got that? Fantastic. I'm getting the thumbs up at the back, which means basically stop. So can I thank the panel? you want to add one final thought?
Well, just a couple of things for me quickly. There's a code of practice being drafted for the overall kind of operation of the industry, but I don't think it would be a complicated thing to put it in there, but the idea of engaging with communities at the planning stage, at the development stage, speak to Tracy, can that get added in as sort of one obvious thought? But we'll take it offline.
Yeah.
And sorry, College Rock name's been mentioned a few times. We're all up for doing surveys on our own tenants, so if anyone wants to use us as a guinea pig, please come forward. We've done it once already with someone else, so thank you.
And thank you all for coming, and obviously, please reach out on LinkedIn. We can't just sort of stop here. It's like every time we come to these things, I think, oh, there's so many really interesting people I wanted to chat with. So please reach out, keep the conversation going, and let's actually stop talking and let's start doing.
Just make a shameless plug before.
You make a shameless plug. Knock yourself out.
I've been putting together a project with BPA, UKA, Get Living, and others to measure the social impact of build to rent in a neighbourhood context. So if anyone would like to be involved, then do please contact me, because that's something we'll be starting very soon. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. You